So for this Dock Talk video, I'm going to kind of go through verbatim what I do in my Dock Talk, but I'm going to add a few anecdotal things as well as I perceive necessary. The biggest thing that I want to get across to my guests is, first and foremost, from a safety standpoint, we always leave the dock or start from our knees, and we return back to the dock at the end of the session on our knees. We don't want to be standing too close to the dock, lose our balance, fall, hit our heads, or coming in at the end and smash into the dock and catapult onto the dock. So when we go to get people on the boards, I'll have them set the paddles off on the step right here. And we reference the carry handle for our guests. So what we want them to essentially do is place both hands up at the front of the deck pad, and they're going to place their far knee on the far side of this carry handle on either side, right in the center of it. So I counterbalance with one hand on the dock, one hand on the board. I pop one knee to either side of that carry handle. I set my toes flat, and I sit my bum down back in my heels, okay? So I'm right in the center of the board, pretty much sitting right over top of the carry handle. Notice my knees are apart. And the reason I want my knees apart is on a stand-up paddle board, we have 5 feet of board ahead of us, 5 feet of board behind us. Really where we're being challenged is laterally, side to side. So have the guests do a little rock side to side to feel how stable it is. By having our knees further apart, just like any other sport, we're far more balanced and far more stable than if they're close together. So if you feel yourself tipping a little bit to the left, we just apply a little bit more pressure down on the right hand knee. Okay. Our paddles are essentially a derivative of outrigger paddles. So they have this funky little 10-degree offset in the blade. Counterintuitive, but we always paddle with that logo forward, okay? And because we're essentially on an oversized surfboard, we have fins in the back, but there's no hull or no keel, so they don't tend to track in a straight line particularly well. So in order to mitigate that, what we want to do is we want to paddle with this paddle shaft as vertical or perpendicular to the water as we can. So when I'm down on my knees, that means I'm going to have to choke both hands down close to the blade so I can have a vertical paddle shaft. If I try and hold the T-grip, it's a very diagonal paddle shaft. It's not going to work well to go in a straight line. So I'm choking down. I'm going to take a couple strokes on one side. I'm going to change hands, change sides, take a couple strokes on the other side, and that's how I'm going to move down the lake. When I want to turn, now I can reach up for that T-grip, and I want to sweep from the back of the board to the front in a big arcing motion as far away from the board as I can, front of the board to the back. That's our turning strokes or our sweep strokes. So those are going to allow us to pivot the board very effectively. And what you'll find is when you pivot or sweep from the back to the front, it's even more effective because it's pivoting on that fin in the back. Now, sometimes people aren't super comfortable being able to bend their knees or have their ankles back, and maybe they're not ready to stand yet. So I always like to tell our guests that another thing to do is just sort of keep yourself centered on the board, and you can spin yourself easily into a sitting position, okay? And you can paddle this thing just like a kayak as well. So, and that's the prerequisite, of course, for the sun tanning or the swimming position as well. When the time comes and they're ready to stand, always make sure that they're far enough away from the dock or any other obstacle that if they do lose their balance and fall, they're not going to hit the dock or hit an obstacle. It's a beautiful calm day today, but if there's wind, try and point the nose of the board into the wind, okay? It's going to be easy, perpendicular into the wind. From here, we're going to set the paddle shaft across the deck of the board. Think of downward facing dog. Set myself up on all fours. My toes are tucked under. And simultaneously, I'm going to straighten both legs. From here, I'm going to step to either side of that carry handle, drop my bum, pull the paddle shaft to my toes, and slowly rise up into an athletic standing position. I don't want to lock my legs out at the top because that'll throw my weight backwards. I want to stay in this athletic standing position with my ankles bent, my knees bent, my shoulders tracking forward over my knees. That way, if my weight is forward and I lose my balance, that's all that happens. I just drop to my hands and my knees and I don't even fall in the water. The alternative is going off the board backwards, and it's not a lot of fun, okay? So again, we're from here, up, step, step, rise. Top hand in the T-grip, bottom hand about midway down the paddle shaft. Now again, a couple strokes on one side, change hands, change sides, a couple strokes on the other. When it comes time to turn from standing, lower your center of mass so that when you do that sweeping stroke, you're not sweeping yourself right off of the board, okay? There's a little bit of torque on the body. That being said, in the event of an involuntary swim, the lake is beautiful. It's clean. You will have a leash on, or a leg rope as they say in Australia. That helps address separation anxiety. Your board isn't going to get away from you. Fall in the water, give the leash a tug, it'll come back to you. You can set your paddle across the deck of the board and the deck rigging. When we remount the board, we do so from the center, adjacent to the carry handle. We don't want to use that carry handle to drag ourselves back up on the board, but essentially come to the side of the board. It's kind of like getting out of the deep end of a swimming pool without a ladder. Just get your hands up on the top, give a good flutter kick, push, pull, or drag yourself back up on the board. When your guests are coming back in at the end of their session, again, I ask that as they're approaching the dock, they do so from their knees, anytime that they're within striking distance. You'll be here to greet them, so, we want to avoid the board smashing into the dock if at all possible. We'll be able to get them in here. The last sort of safety tip that I encourage them to do is, set the paddle up on the step. Avoid the urge to stand at this point. Simply one hand on the dock, one hand on the board, and flip your bum up on the edge of the side rail, and you're golden. A couple other little things just with respect to the lake. If it is a windier day, I encourage guests to go up into a headwind, come back with a tailwind, okay? The nice little bays, twin bays over here, are always well protected and there's no boat traffic in it. So again, it's a nice place to go if people just want to chill out and swim. Wow.